my name is Julia. I sat the bar exam this February 2025 and I passed first try as a foreign trained attorney. I also, while doing the bar exam, was completing my Masters of National Security Law at Georgetown in Washington, D.C. And today in this video, I just wanted to share with you a little bit about my experience as a foreign trained lawyer, taking the New York bar and passing first try, which was a great achievement. So I'd like to share some of my tips with you today. To basically try not sleep, and I think that's a huge challenge, right? So that was a lot of work. I call it the backwards method, and it was very, very tough at times. You've probably already heard about the New York bar exam because you're here watching this video. And as you would know, that the exam actually consists of 2 days of testing. The first day is essays and legal writing, and the second day is the dreaded MBE, which is a 200-question multiple choice exam that lasts a total of 6 hours. It's 3 hours in the morning, then you have your lunch break, and then 3 hours in the afternoon. So that is the exam that I sat in the New York State in February this year. And I just wanted to tell you some of the methods that I used. In particular, today I would like to unpack the MBE exam because that seems to be the most dreaded part, the part that a lot of students find the most difficult, just because it's so many questions and you're also under a lot of time pressure to answer correctly. And so I would like to break that down for you in terms of what I did to study, to prepare for it, because my method was a little bit different to what you will hear your friends do or the previous bar exam takers do. And this is by no means advice that you should be taking directly in terms of what you should be doing with your studies. This is just my experience and what I did, and I'm making this video hopefully to give you some tips and some advice, but by no means is this a proven method. I passed when I said it in February, but this method may not work for you. So take this as a grain of salt advice, but it's just personal experience that I wanted to share with you today. Because I knew that I would be taking the bar exam in February, and that was in the middle of my master's degree, the reason that as a foreign lawyer I was able to register for the bar exam and do my master's at the same time in the US is because I'm an Australian admitted lawyer, and Australian admitted lawyers are allowed to sit the bar exam in New York without having to cure the deficiencies, or how they refer to it, for other foreign students. And there are some exemptions I know for lawyers from the UK, I think it's New Zealand and Canada as well. And so I was able to then do the bar simultaneously as my law studies in the US. I know for a lot of foreign students you don't have that option, so naturally you would be graduating from your master's degree and then you'd be sitting the New York bar in July, whereas I took the February exam. So I knew that I would be taking my exam at the same time as the master's degree, and so I couldn't have the same approach as I would have taken if I was just doing the July exam, free from all of my master's studies. So what typically students do is they will graduate from a master's degree, and then they will spend 2 months full-time studying for the bar, and then they complete the bar at the end of July because our semester finishes in May. So I graduated from my Georgetown law degree, the master's degree, in May, and I would have now been preparing myself for the bar exam, but I took the bar exam in Feb and I received my result of passing, thankfully, in April. And so because I knew that I was doing something a little bit different, I consulted some of my colleagues who had already passed the bar exam previously. One of them was an Australian lawyer, another was a Russian qualified lawyer, and they passed the New York bar after completing their master's degree in the US. And so they both had different advice for me, and it was very, very useful. One advice that came through was that the Barbri preparation that most of the students, actually every single student I know, uses Barbri to prepare for the bar exam. Now that's a preparatory program that consists of books, lectures, and trial tests and exams. And I think that that's a really good program and really structured in terms of really getting you up to speed and teaching you everything there is to know about the bar exam. One of the feedback that I received was that this person wished they didn't focus so much on the bar prep materials from Barbri, just because there was a lot of theory, and that because the MBE, which is the multiple choice component, was so challenging and you're under so much pressure to perform well in this particular section, which is a whole day of the second day of your examination, that it was wiser perhaps to spend the most of your time doing practice questions from a software program called Adaptibar. Now, Adaptibar is now part of the Barbri kind of study prep group, but it's seen almost like a supplement to the Barbri theory and the course books and the lectures that you get. So definitely if you're doing the Barbri route, and I highly recommend that you do that route. I was just doing something completely different and I was experimenting almost on myself, and luckily it worked out. But I would use the Barbri prep with all of the methods of what I was using to help myself pass, and that was to look at as many practice questions as possible. Now, practice questions, really, really important. I read somewhere, and this was continuous advice that I've seen come up time and time again, that it is advisable to complete at least 2,000 practice questions in order to feel confident that you're ready for the MBE. 2,000 questions is a lot, and so if you're planning to set the bar and study for it in 2 months' time, you would have to basically try not sleep, and I think that that's a huge challenge, right? And so the software that I was recommended to purchase, it's called Adaptibar. It is part of Barbri, as I mentioned, and it's seen as a supplement in order to help you prepare for the MBE. So the method that I use, and again, this is something that was quite unorthodox, so I wouldn't be using this method necessarily, but I'm just revealing what I did. I call it the backwards method, or the backwards technique. And what I did was I purchased this Adaptibar software that was recommended by a friend, and I started the practice questions immediately, almost, just to see how familiar I could get with the types of questions that were being asked, the topics, and also just to see if any of them made common sense to me as a foreign trained lawyer. As an Australian lawyer, I studied similar subjects. So for example, torts is a very common one because the US system is based on the common law system. So there's a lot of similarity in terms of common law when it comes to torts, contracts. It's all taken from British law. And so I just wanted to see how much information I had retained through my previous studies doing the Juris Doctor at the University of Sydney, how much of that I could apply. It turns out that some of it was relevant, but the bar exam, the MBE component, is all about how you study for this particular exam. So even if you're a brilliant lawyer and you know all of the black letter law, and you've practiced it and you really understand it, that's really great. But the bar exam was a completely different kind of beast. It's all about understanding what they're trying to test and catch you out on, and picking the best response in the multiple choice. You get one answer out of 4 options. And so you have to be very careful and very fast in terms of, looking at the buzzwords, looking at the specific areas that the question is trying to test you on. On top of that, you're being tested on 7 law subjects at the same time. I don't know about you, but when I was doing my law exams back in Sydney and also at Georgetown and DC, I never had an exam that tested me on simultaneous areas of the law. It was always one subject at a time. The bar exam was particularly challenging because the multiple choice section tests you on 7 different law subjects at the same time. And you don't know what the question is testing you on because there's not going to be a heading that actually will tell you what they're trying to test on. You will learn to decipher, you will learn to understand, and you will be able to, of course, tell the difference whether the question is testing you on contracts versus evidence versus civil procedure. But the whole premise is that you should have done enough practice questions to really understand and prepare for the bar exam. So you're not really studying for a law exam, you're studying for this particular exam. And it's just the nature of how it's set up. So I basically just continued to do the questions. And then what I did was, with the backwards method, is I started to build up my notes and my scaffolding of what the specific law that I was learning, the rules, the particular questions that I got wrong. I started to build up my notes for the exams from these questions that I either got right or wrong, but I just started to build in these specific rules, and it's almost like I started to build my notes simultaneously with doing the practice questions, because you can't just do all of the preparation and all of the reading and then start doing the 2000 practice questions. Like, that's something that's going to be very, very challenging from a time perspective. So my advice is to start doing practice questions as early as possible so that you really start to understand what they're testing you on. So let's talk more about this Adaptibar software, which I used to prepare. I started doing the practice questions early. I basically arrived in DC in August last year, 2024. I started my master's program and I started studying for the MBE through the Adaptibar software. So Adaptibar has, I think, close to 2,000 practice questions in the system. A lot of them are official questions that have been tested in the previous years. A lot of them are generated, so the system would have generated certain questions based on patterns in order to give you time to practice. Now, what I understand is, because civil procedure was introduced only recently as one of the tested subjects, so you will be tested on 7 topics in total. So you have torts, contracts, real estate, civil procedure, evidence, criminal law, and constitutional law. And civil procedure was introduced recently, and so there aren't as many practice questions that had been released for civil procedure. So I found the almost like the statistics of accuracy as to what I was getting right or wrong to have been a bit random for me personally. And so on civil procedure, initially I was getting only like 40% of the questions correct, which was quite distressing for the first few months. And then the rest were just kind of, at the 50% mark. So I knew that I was practicing and I was building up my scaffolding, but what I was missing was the actual substantive content. And I thought, well, what if I don't go through every single question, or what if the questions that I'm doing have missed something potentially? And so Adaptibar also has this option where you can purchase these short lectures on black letter law, and they're all done by Jonathan Grossman, who is very particular in terms of how he teaches you these subjects that you need to know for the MBE. But he's quite good at drilling things down and really simmering it down to the core black letter law principles, and then the buzzwords that you need to look for in order to identify what's actually being tested. And that really helps. This kind of method of listening to the lectures, and that's another way that I could dilute, I guess, my practicing, which can be quite daunting when you're doing so many questions at the same time as study, and you're trying to learn from the questions. You want to dilute your study methods somewhat, and the lectures are great because you can watch those at your own pace, and it's on each topic and then subtopics under each subject. And then what you do is you will build the scaffoldings, your notes, even further from those lectures, which is what I did. Now, in your scenario, if you're doing the Barbri prep, you're probably going to be, you have your notes already, and you'd just be supplementing it. And so it's something that is a very useful tool in any case, whether you already have the notes from Barbri and you've done all of your preparation that way. But if some particular topic is just not sticking, like especially with civil procedure, there was a lot that I was just not piecing together properly, and so listening to the Jonathan Grossman lectures really helped me. And so I will link here one of his videos that he did as a review or as a prep with students, that's available on YouTube. And you could see his teaching style, and I found it really useful because it really just boiled down the material, because you're not going to be able to remember. See, this is what dawned on me when I was doing my notes, and I had like 500 pages of these perfect notes that I put together for each subject, and everything was, really set out, all the rules were there. But you can't bring those notes with you on test day. So what do? Like, you have to actually memorize all of these rules, and you will not be able to memorize 500 pages unless you're some kind of genius and you have photographic memory. But let's face it, most of us do not fall into that category. So what can we do when you have an average memory and you need sleep and you also need to stay sane for this exam, is you actually will need to bite-size everything. You need to remember little rules on cue cards, use like flashcards, and Adaptibar also has this tool where you can play through different flashcards. You can make the digital flashcards yourself, you can print them out, you can write them out on different colored paper, which is what I did. And I stuck them either on the walls, or I would review them before bed, and that's a method that really worked for me, because you need to start memorizing the rules ASAP. So once you feel like your scaffolding, your notes are all done, and you've reviewed the lectures and you've done a few practice questions, you need to start memorizing the rules, or come up with ways to start memorizing. And I think that is the hardest part, and that's something that I think as law students we don't want to do, because we want to have our notes perfect and we want to have our notes in this amazing format, and we'll pour our heart and soul into the notes. But just remember that you can't memorize all of those perfect notes. So whatever technique you need to do to memorize, just start doing it as soon as possible. That's the best advice I can give. So I'm going to show you the material that I prepared for my memorization techniques. So these are all flashcards. I just bought these different ones on Amazon, and what I did was, as I put the headings of the subject that I'm studying, or the rule. So this one was evidence, then I have criminal law, I have civil procedure, and each flashcard will have a bunch of rules that I would have scribbled on and highlighted. Some of them would have, like civil procedure. What was really important, for example, is memorizing how many days you have to file something between like court procedures and motions. So FRCP Rule 12 says that you have all of these defenses on motions, and when you can file them, it's like you really need to remember that. So I had this, and then for the exam, just before the exam, I printed out my 500 page notes. But what I did was I would have, for example, evidence, right, as a separate section, and then I would tab them by the different topic, and each one would be broken down into rules. And I mean, you're all law students, so you know how to do law notes, but this was just something that I wanted to review while I was in my hotel room in between days when you don't have time to look at anything else. And you can also bring these into the center, the testing center. You can't bring it past security, but you can bring it with you on the day, so it's just something to read if you're nervous. The flashcards were good because I could lie in bed at the end of each day of prep and I would just read them. I read them before going to sleep so that hopefully my brain would memorize all of these rules. So that's some of the techniques. Adaptibar helped me a lot, and again, I didn't use Barbri, I didn't use any other method, I didn't use other books or prep materials, I just used Adaptibar, and then I built my notes. I used Jonathan Grossman's lectures, and I built up my notes, and this is all of them here. This is based on practice questions and Jonathan Grossman's lectures, nothing else. The only exception, I would say, this is something that I must reveal. So I took constitutional law in the first semester of my master's program. I learned a lot of cases in that class. I learned a lot about the history of the Constitution and some of the really important cases. You don't need to know cases at all for the bar exam. But if you were lucky enough to have studied the US Constitution, or if you're able to take any of these courses like civil procedure or the Constitution or evidence in your master's course while you're doing your master's law degree in the US and then you're going to sit the bar, take as many of the courses that you can. That's going to count towards your master's degree and will help you understand the bar exam deeper. You will still need to learn the rules and how the exam tests the constitutional law, for example, or like evidence, but it'll give you such a good grounding and it'll help you memorize for sure. So I think doing constitutional law as part of my master's degree actually helped, and I came first in that class, so a little bragging, but I think that really helped. So that was my method for passing the multiple choice section, at least. I mean, it was not easy. The hardest part was memorizing stuff, just memorizing all the rules and memorizing dates and memorizing just archaic things. Yeah, I think you will be able to work out what you know and what you don't know pretty quickly. I guarantee you that civil procedure will not be easy, but perhaps that's why you should spend more time doing the practice questions early, see where you're getting the questions wrong and why exactly you're getting them wrong. And that's the beauty of Adaptibar, because it will show you exactly, so it'll give you all of the answer choices, it'll give you the short version of the correct answer and why, and then there's a long explanation as well. So at the end of your studies, you can print out these reports that will actually show you which questions you got wrong, and you can print them out, you can save them on your computer. I can actually show you some here. Now here you have, let me see. And here the extended explanation is what you would use to help build up your notes. This is what I did, because look at all of the rules that it's actually citing. It's giving you information as to the witness, whether the witness is credible, and then I would highlight this as a rule basis for my notes as well. So that was it. That was my study method. It took a lot of effort. It took a lot of frustration. It wasn't an easy journey by no means. This is something that's quite full on and grueling. So it's not going to be an easy task, but if you break it down into doable sections and take your time, I know that if you're doing this between graduating and July, that it is a huge cramming session, and good luck to you. I did mine across 6 months, but again, I was doing it full-time with full-time study, and also I was doing an internship, a legal internship at World Bank at that point, and so I was doing 5 subjects full-time, studying for the bar, and then doing the legal internship, and so that was a lot of work, and it was very, very tough at times, but this is the technique that I used, and it didn't let me down. So I really trust Adaptibar, I trust the process, I trust in Jonathan Grossman's lectures, and good luck. This effort is huge. It's not an easy task by any means. So I wish you the best of luck. And if you're still considering the bar, it's not easy, but it is definitely doable. But I will be sharing more information, more content, more tips on the bar exam and then getting admitted. So I'm waiting to get admitted in New York now. I've got all my documents in order, and I'm tentatively about to be admitted in September. So the whole thing I managed to do in less than a year, which has been crazy, but at the same time doable, as you can see. So good luck on this journey, and I hope you found this video useful, and I hope that you will check out my other videos that I make when I have the time to help out other lawyers. And so good luck with everything, and I hope to see you on my channel again soon.